Hello, my name is William, and welcome to Dragon X Dominion, a realm where dragon legends are forged in fire, honor, and forgotten worlds. I will be your narrator and guide through these epic lands. If you crave powerful stories, legendary dragons, and wars that echo through eternity, then you found your home, ladies and gentlemen. So subscribe, and claim your place among these legends.
The distress signal made no sense. Danny Ross had been hauling cargo through the outer margin for 6 years, and he knew what emergency broadcasts sounded like. This was different. The frequency kept shifting, almost like it was breathing, and it pulled at something deep in his chest that he could not explain. His navigation system told him to ignore it. Company policy said the same thing, but Danny had never been good at following rules when someone might need help. The Lonesome Road was not much of a ship. She was old, patched in a dozen places, and complained loudly whenever Danny pushed her too hard. Right now she was complaining as he diverted from his route toward the source of that strange signal. The moon appeared on his sensors first. Barren, gray, officially listed as uninhabited. But there was a structure down there, something big enough to have its own power signature. Danny brought his ship lower, scanning for a safe landing spot near what looked like a mining station. The place was abandoned. That much was clear from orbit. No ships in the docking bay, no lights in the windows, no movement anywhere. Danny sat down on a cracked landing pad and sat for a moment, thinking about all the reasons this was a bad idea. He went anyway. The airlock of the station opened easily, which was the first warning sign. Places that get abandoned in a hurry usually lock everything down. Danny checked his oxygen levels and stepped inside, his boots echoing in empty corridors. Scorch marks covered the walls, deep ones, the kind that came from extreme heat. Danny followed them deeper into the facility, past overturned furniture and scattered equipment. Someone had left in a panic. The lab was at the center of the station. Heavy doors hung open, their locking mechanisms melted from the inside. Danny stepped through and stopped breathing. 6 containment chambers lined the far wall. All of them were broken, their reinforced glass shattered outward. Burn marks radiated from each one like small explosions. But that was not what made Danny freeze. Bodies lay scattered across the floor. 4 of them, all wearing lab coats, all dead. The way they had fallen suggested they had been running toward the exit when something caught them. Movement in the corner made Danny reach for the stunner on his belt. Then he saw what was huddled there, and his hand fell away. Dragons, 6 of them, each no bigger than a large cat. Their scales were dull, not the brilliant colors he had seen in educational videos. They were pressed together in a tight group, shaking. Danny had seen dragons before. Everyone had in warnings and threat assessments. Most dangerous predator in known space. Touch meant death. Approach meant attack. Every spacer learned that in basic training. These dragons did not look dangerous. They looked terrified. The smallest one was shaking so hard its whole body trembled. Metal collars circled each of their necks, blinking with red lights. Scars marked their scales, some fresh, some old. One had a twisted wing that hung at the wrong angle. Danny did something stupid. He took off his helmet. The dragons flinched at the hiss of releasing pressure. The smallest one made a sound, high and thin, that reminded Danny of puppies he had fostered back on Earth before he started running cargo. He knelt down slowly, keeping his movements small and careful. The dragons watched him with eyes that were too intelligent, too aware. Fear radiated from them in waves. Danny extended his hand, palm up, fingers relaxed. He did not move closer, he just waited. The smallest dragon looked at the others, then back at Danny. It took one hesitant step forward, then another. The other dragons made worried sounds but did not stop it. When the tiny dragon touched its snout to Danny's palm, he felt warmth. Not burning, not pain, just warmth and something else, something that felt like desperate hope. The dragon's eyes closed and it leaned into his hand. Danny could feel it shaking. One by one, the others came forward. They pressed against him, climbed onto his lap, wrapped around his arms. Danny sat on the floor of that terrible lab and held 6 dragons while they made sounds that broke his heart. It took him an hour to gather them all and get them back to his ship. He wrapped them in thermal blankets from his emergency supplies and settled them in the cargo bay. They would not let him leave. Every time he tried to step away, they panicked. Danny sat with them and pulled up the lab's computer system on his portable terminal. The files were still there, protected by weak passwords that took him 10 minutes to crack. What he read made his hands shake with anger. This had been a breeding facility. Illegal, hidden, funded by someone with serious money. The dragons were being raised as weapons. The collars were pain inducers running. Low-level shocks constantly to make the dragons aggressive. They had tortured babies for months. The logs showed the dragons had broken free 3 days ago. They had attacked only the people who hurt them, then huddled together, too scared to leave, too young to know where to go. That distress signal had been them. Somehow they had been calling for help. Danny deleted his tracks from the station's computer and set course for Frontier Station Obelisk. The dragons needed medical care. They needed someone who knew how to help them. He knew a xenobiologist there who specialized in rescue cases. He did not know that 17 minutes after he left, the Galactic Network registered 6 dragon biosignatures moving through space. He did not know that alerts were being sent to every station, every ship, every enforcement office in the sector. He did not know that he had just become the most wanted man in the galaxy, protecting the most feared creatures in known space. The smallest dragon climbed onto his shoulder as he flew, curling around his neck like a scarf. It made a soft sound, almost like a purr. Danny reached up and gently scratched under its chin. The dragon leaned into the touch, trusting him completely. Whatever came next, he would figure it out. These babies had been hurt enough. Frontier Station Obelisk filled Danny's view screen like a city made of metal and light. Thousands of ships moved around it in careful patterns, docking and departing in an endless flow of commerce. Danny had been here dozens of times. It had always felt welcoming before. Today it felt like a trap. His communication system came alive the moment he entered scanning range. Every frequency lit up at once, all of them saying the same thing. Emergency lockdown, all ships hold position, no exceptions. Danny slowed the lonesome road and opened a channel. Before he could speak, a harsh voice cut through. This is station security. Ship registration Lonesome Road, you are carrying unauthorized biological cargo. Power down your engines immediately and prepare for boarding. In the cargo bay behind him, the dragons stirred nervously. They could sense something was wrong. The smallest one, the one that had claimed Danny's shoulder as its favorite spot, pressed closer to his neck. Danny kept his voice steady. This is Danny Ross, captain of the Lonesome Road. I have injured animals aboard that need medical attention. Requesting. Emergency veterinary services. The response was immediate and cold. Negative. Dragons are classified as Category 5 threats. Surrender them for immediate termination or face criminal charges. Through his viewport, Danny watched armed security ships forming a perimeter around his vessel. Their weapons were powered up, targeting systems locked on. 50 guns pointed at his small cargo hauler. He thought about the dragons behind him, about the scars on their scales and the fear in their eyes, about how the smallest one had trusted him enough to touch his hand. Danny closed the communication channel and flew his ship directly into the nearest docking bay. Alarms screamed as he landed without clearance, but he was already sealing the cargo bay doors and engaging every lock the Lonesome Road had. Security teams surrounded his ship within minutes. Danny could see them through the external cameras, 30 armed officers in full combat gear. Their commander stood at the front, a tall Tarvelian whose face showed no emotion. The commander's voice came through the external speakers. This is Commander Brent. You have one opportunity to surrender the creatures peacefully. Open your cargo bay. Danny activated his own external speakers. The dragons are victims, not threats. They were tortured in an illegal breeding facility. They need help, not execution. Commander Brent's expression did not change. That is not your determination to make. Open the cargo bay or we will cut through. Danny looked at the dragons gathered around him. They were watching him with those intelligent eyes, understanding that danger had found them again. The bold one, the one with white-hot flames, positioned itself between Danny and the sealed door. The two that always moved together pressed against his legs. The one with the twisted wing made a soft, worried sound. He was trapped. No weapons, no backup, and an entire station ready to kill the beings he was trying to protect. A new voice cut into the standoff, calmer but firm. "Commander Brent, this is Dr. Yuki Tanaka. I am requesting permission to board the Lonesome Road under scientific observer protocols." Danny felt a flash of hope. He knew Yuki from previous stops at Obelisk. She studied endangered species, spent her career trying to save creatures most people wanted dead. Brent's reply was sharp, denied. "This is a security matter, Doctor." Yuki's voice hardened. "Those dragons are the rarest biological specimens in known space. Before you destroy them, I have a right to document them for scientific record. Council Regulation 7-4 gives me that authority." The silence stretched for 20 seconds. Then Brent spoke again, his words clipped. "You have 15 minutes. Confirm threat level and withdraw." The airlock cycled and Yuki entered the Lonesome Road. She was small, barely came up to Danny's shoulder, but she moved with absolute confidence. Her eyes went wide when she saw the dragons. She had studied them for decades. She had analyzed every scrap of data, every recorded encounter, every autopsy report. But she had never seen a living dragon before. Most people never did. The species was nearly extinct. Danny watched as she approached slowly, her scanner recording everything. The dragons watched her back, uncertain but not aggressive. Yuki knelt near the smallest one, and her hands moved carefully over its body, never quite touching. Her scanner beeped softly. After 10 minutes, she stood and faced Danny. Her expression was grim. "These collars are torture devices. They have been causing constant pain for months. The dragons broke free when survival instinct overcame the agony." She pointed to the bodies visible in the data logs Danny had transferred to his terminal. They only attacked the ones who hurt them. She turned toward the external cameras, knowing Brent was watching. "Commander, these are infants, 3 months old at most. They have imprinted on Mr. Ross as a protector because he is the first being to show them kindness. This is not a threat situation. This is a rescue." Brent's response came quick and hard. "Your assessment is noted and rejected. Dragons reach maturity at 6 months. In 3 months, those infants will be killing machines. They will be terminated in 1 hour. Dr. Tanaka, exit the vessel now." Yuki did not move. She looked at Danny, then at the dragons, then back at the cameras. "I am filing an emergency appeal to the Galactic Council. These dragons deserve a hearing." Brent's laugh was bitter. "File what you want. The answer will be the same." But he gave them 48 hours. Danny suspected it was more about procedure than mercy. The council needed to be informed before executing rare specimens, even dangerous ones. Danny spent those hours learning about his unexpected companions, the bold one that liked to explore everything, the timid one that hid behind the others, the siblings that moved like mirror images, the one with the damaged wing who had the strongest bite, and the smallest one, the one that seemed to feel what everyone around her was feeling. He tried not to name them, tried not to get attached. He failed completely. When the council representatives arrived, Danny knew this was their only chance. Win here or lose everything. The hearing room was designed to make people feel small. High ceilings, cold metal walls, and a raised platform where the council members sat looking down at everyone else. Danny stood in the center of the room with 6 dragons pressed against his legs, trying not to show how scared he was. Counselor Hayes sat on the left side of the platform. She was human, maybe 50 years old, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Danny hoped that would work in his favor. Counselor Reth sat on the right. He was Corvaxian, tall and severe, known throughout the galaxy for harsh judgments. He looked at the dragons the way someone might look at a disease. Between them sat 3 other council members whose names Danny had already forgotten. They would vote however the wind blew. Hayes and Reth were the ones who mattered. The prosecution went first. A lawyer whose name was Anderson presented 2 hours of evidence showing why dragons could not exist in civilized space. Videos of destroyed settlements, medical reports of victims, statistics about attack patterns. Danny noticed that most of the attacks happened during poaching operations. People trying to steal dragon eggs or capture adults for illegal zoos. The dragons had been defending themselves. Anderson did not mention that part. Dr. Tanaka testified next. She showed scans of the torture collars, explained how the pain had driven the dragons to break free. She presented her analysis of their behavior over the past 48 hours. They show no aggression unless threatened. They communicate with each other through sounds and body language. They display problem-solving skills and emotional intelligence. These are not mindless killers. They are children who have been abused. Reth leaned forward, his voice cold. Children who will become adults. Your own data shows dragons reach maturity at 6 months. What happens when these small creatures become large enough to destroy ships? Tanaka met his gaze. We do not know. No one has ever tried to raise dragons with kindness. Before, exactly, Reth said. We do not know. That uncertainty is reason enough for termination. Hayes interrupted. Mr. Ross, you have spent more time with these dragons than anyone alive. Tell us what you have observed. Danny had never spoken in front of a council before. His hands shook as he stepped forward. The smallest dragon made a worried sound and climbed up his leg to his shoulder. Security officers moved closer, hands on weapons, but Hayes waved them back. Danny chose his words carefully. They are scared. They have been hurt their whole lives and they do not understand why. When I found them, they could have attacked me. I was alone, vulnerable. They did not. They asked for help. How do you know they asked? Reth's tone suggested he thought Danny was lying. Because I could feel it. Danny struggled to explain something he barely understood himself. That distress signal that led me to them, it was not mechanical. It was them calling out for someone to save them. Reth made a dismissive sound, emotional testimony, not evidence. Hayes looked interested. The signal was confirmed by station logs. No ship, no beacon, just a biological broadcast on a frequency we have never encountered before. The hearing continued for another hour. Arguments back and forth, data and counterdata, fear versus hope. Danny could see the council members getting tired, ready to vote for the easy answer. Then the smallest dragon acted. She had been quiet on Danny's shoulder, just listening. But suddenly she moved, launching herself into the air with wings that should not have been strong enough to carry her yet. Security raised weapons. Anderson shouted. Reth stood up, backing away. The dragon flew straight to the council platform and landed in front of Hayes. She sat there, small and scared, and looked up at the counselor with eyes that held too much understanding. Hayes stared back, frozen. The dragon began to broadcast. Danny felt it wash over the room like a wave. Not words, not sounds, but feelings and images, memories. Pain, constant, burning pain from the collar that never stopped. Hunger that gnawed at empty bellies. Fear of the people in lab coats who came with needles and prods. The confusion of young minds trying to understand why everything hurt. Then a different memory. A man taking off his helmet, extending his hand, speaking in soft tones. The alien feeling of gentle touch, the warmth of being. Wrapped in blankets, the safety of finally not hurting. The broadcast ended and the room sat in absolute silence. Several council members had tears running down their faces. Anderson looked shaken. Even Reth seemed affected, though he tried to hide it. Hayes reached out slowly and touched one finger to the dragon's head. The dragon leaned into the touch, trusting. Counselor Reth, Hayes said quietly, I withdraw my neutral position. I move that these dragons be placed in protective custody with Mr. Ross as their guardian. Reth looked at the small dragon, then at the 5 others pressed against Danny's legs. Something had changed in his expression. I withdraw my position for termination, he said, and his voice was rough. I second the motion for protective custody, but with conditions. The conditions were harsh. Danny would relocate to an isolated research station at his own expense. Constant monitoring and surveillance. Regular reports to the council. If any dragon showed signs of dangerous behavior, immediate termination of all 6. And a 6-month probationary period. If the dragons survived that long without incident, the arrangement could become permanent. Danny agreed before Reth finished speaking. The vote was unanimous. As Danny left the hearing room with 6 dragons following him like ducklings, he allowed himself to feel hope for the first time. He named them quietly under his breath. Blaze for the bold one, Whisper for the timid one, Crooked for the twisted wing, Storm and Cloud for the siblings, Little Bit for the smallest, the one who had changed everything. Dr. Tanaka caught up with him in the corridor. I am coming with you. Someone needs to document this properly. Danny smiled, welcome aboard. Behind them, they did not see the message being sent across secure channels. The Obsidian Circle had been watching the hearing. Their property had just been legally stolen. They wanted it back. Research Station Halcyon had been abandoned for 15 years. It sat on a planet with breathable air and stable weather, but no valuable resources. The Council had used it once for atmospheric studies, then left it when funding ran out. Now it was home. Danny stood outside the main building watching his 6 dragons explore their new territory. They had grown in the 3 weeks since the hearing. Already they were the size of large dogs, and Dr. Tanaka said they would double in size within month. Blaze climbed the tallest tree he could find, his white scales gleaming in the sunlight. Whisper practiced her camouflage, blending into rocks and grass until she was nearly invisible. Storm and Cloud chased each other through the meadow with perfect coordination. Crooked tested his strength, dragging fallen logs twice his size. Little Bit sat beside Danny, watching everything with those 2 knowing eyes. They were happy, that was what mattered. Dr. Tanaka emerged from the lab building carrying scanning equipment. She had transformed the old research station into a proper facility, bringing supplies and instruments from Obelisk. Her published papers were already changing how the galaxy viewed dragons. Feeding time, she called out. The dragons came running. Well, 5 of them ran. Little Bit simply climbed onto Danny's shoulder where she spent most of her time. They ate constantly now. Fresh meat, mineral supplements, even some fruits that Tanaka had discovered they liked. Blaze could eat his own weight in food every day. Storm and Cloud competed to see who could eat faster. After feeding, Danny worked with them on basic training, not tricks or commands but communication, teaching them to understand boundaries and safety. They learned fast, faster than any animal he had ever worked with. Blaze discovered his fire breath by accident, nearly setting the meadow ablaze. Danny taught him control, how to direct it, when to use it. Within a week, Blaze could light a campfire without scorching anything else. Whisper's camouflage was instinctive, but she learned to use it deliberately. She would hide and Danny would try to find her, turning it into a game. She got so good that sometimes even Little Bit could not sense where she was. Crooked's wing would never heal properly, but he compensated with raw strength. His jaw could crush metal. Danny taught him gentleness, how to control that power. Crooked learned to carry eggs in his mouth without breaking them. Storm and Cloud developed something Tanaka called paired consciousness. They moved as one being in 2 bodies, anticipating each other perfectly. They could coordinate attacks or defenses with no communication anyone else could detect. Little Bit remained the smallest, but her abilities were the most remarkable. She could sense emotions from across the compound. When Danny felt sad, she would find him and press against his side until he felt better. When Tanaka worked too long without rest, Little Bit would sit on her desk and refuse to move until the doctor took a break. The weeks passed peacefully. Danny sent regular reports to the council. Tanaka published more research. The dragons thrived in ways no one had thought possible. Then the supply ship crashed. Danny heard the explosion from across the compound. He ran toward the sound with all 6 dragons following. Black smoke rose from behind the eastern hills, and he could smell burning fuel. The ship had come down hard, torn apart on impact. Its reactor was unstable, radiation warnings flashing on Danny's handheld scanner. Worse, there were people inside. 4 crew members injured and trapped. Danny tried to reach them, but the heat drove him back. Metal debris blocked the entry hatch, and he did not have tools strong enough to move it. The reactor would go critical in minutes. If it did, the blast would kill everyone within a kilometer. He turned to call for help and found his dragons already moving. Blaze and Whisper worked together without being told. Blaze created a fire break, burning away the dry grass that would spread the flames. Whisper used her camouflage to get close to the ship, reporting back on the crew's location with sounds Danny had learned to interpret. Storm and Cloud moved to the debris blocking the hatch. They planted their feet and lifted, muscles straining. The metal groaned and shifted, not enough to clear it, but enough to create a gap. Crooked stepped forward and clamped his powerful jaws on the twisted metal. He pulled, his damaged wing flaring for balance, and the debris tore free with a screech. Danny dove through the opening, 4 crew members inside, 2 unconscious, 2 barely aware. He grabbed the first one, a young engineer, and dragged her out. The dragons were waiting. Little Bit stayed with the injured woman, and somehow her presence seemed to calm the pain. Back inside for the second one, a pilot with a broken leg. The ship was shaking now, the reactor reaching critical levels. Danny pulled him free, and the dragons moved him to safety. Third crew member, the captain, pinned under a fallen support beam. Danny could not lift it alone. Storm and Cloud appeared beside him, using their combined strength to raise the beam enough for Danny to pull the captain free. The fourth was the hardest. She was trapped in the reactor room itself, unconscious. From radiation exposure, Danny knew going in there meant serious exposure for himself, possibly fatal. He went anyway. Blaze followed him, using his fire to create a heat shield that bought Danny precious seconds. He found the crew member and carried her out, his radiation badge screaming warnings. They cleared the ship with 30 seconds to spare. The reactor went critical with a sound like thunder, the ship tearing itself apart. But everyone was safe, sheltered behind a ridge where the dragons had instinctively moved them. The rescue took 43 minutes from start to finish. The station's emergency cameras recorded all of it. By the next morning, the footage had spread across the entire galaxy. Billions of people watched as the most dangerous predators in known space risked their lives to save strangers. Public opinion shifted overnight. Protests demanding the dragons' termination turned into rallies supporting them. Council members who had voted for execution now claimed they had always believed in the project. But the attention had a price. The Obsidian Circle saw the broadcast, too. They saw 6 healthy, well-trained dragons worth millions on the black market. And they saw exactly where those dragons lived. The inspection team arrived on a Tuesday morning with all the proper credentials. Council authorization codes, official documentation, even a polite message sent 3 days in advance. Dr. Tanaka reviewed everything twice and found no issues. Danny trusted his instincts instead of paperwork. Something felt wrong. The team leader introduced himself as Inspector Wells, a middle-aged human with a friendly smile that never reached his eyes. His team of 6 spread out across the facility, scanning equipment, checking safety protocols, asking questions. Little Bit stayed pressed against Danny's leg, trembling. She never trembled anymore. Dr. Tanaka gave the inspection team a tour of the lab facilities while Danny stayed with the dragons in their enclosure. Blaze paced nervously. Storm and Cloud refused to separate. Even Crooked, normally the calmest, kept his powerful jaws clenched tight. They know, Danny thought, somehow they know. Wells appeared at the enclosure fence, still wearing that empty smile. Remarkable creatures, much larger than I expected. They grow fast when they are not being tortured, Danny said. The smile flickered. Of course, the council will be pleased with the progress report. Wells pulled a small device from his pocket, no bigger than a coin. He held it up as if examining it in the light. The world exploded into pain. The dragons screamed, not roars or growls, but screams of pure agony. They collapsed, bodies convulsing, claws tearing at their own scales. Little bit fell from Danny's shoulder, hitting the ground hard. Neural disruption field, Wells said, and his smile was gone now. Same frequency as the old collars. Your dragons remember this pain very well. Danny lunged for him, but two of the inspection team grabbed his arms, forcing him down. Through the fence, he watched his dragons suffering. Blaze was breathing fire wildly, setting the grass ablaze. Storm crashed into Cloud, neither able to control their movements. Whisper appeared and disappeared randomly, her camouflage misfiring. Wells walked to the lab building where Dr. Tanaka stood frozen in the doorway. Behind her, the rest of his team had weapons drawn. The Obsidian Circle sends its regards, Wells said. Those dragons are valuable property. You stole them. They are living beings, Tanaka shouted over the dragon's screams. Not property. Wells shrugged. Semantics. We are taking them back, kill the witnesses, and destroy the facility. No evidence. Security protocols activated automatically, sealing the compound. Reinforced barriers dropped over exits. Wells had planned for that. His team began placing explosives, working calmly despite the chaos. Danny fought against the men holding him, but they were trained, and he was not. He could only watch as his dragons tore themselves apart from the inside, the neural field forcing their bodies to attack everything around them. Crooked smashed through a wall in his agony. Storm accidentally struck Cloud hard enough to draw blood. Blaze's fire spread across the enclosure, smoke filling the air. But even in their pain, even driven mad by the neural torture, the dragons avoided Danny. Blaze's wild flames came within inches of him but never touched him. When Storm crashed past in blind panic, he somehow missed crushing Danny by centimeters. They were still trying not to hurt him. That realization gave Danny strength. He stopped fighting and went limp, catching his captors off guard. When they loosened their grip, he twisted free and ran. Not away toward the pain. The neural field generator sat on a stand near Wells, broadcasting its torture signal. Danny did not slow down. He did not think. He just ran straight at it and kicked with everything he had. The generator flew off its stand and hit the ground hard. The casing cracked. Wells shouted and tried to grab it, but Danny was faster. He brought his boot down on the device again and again, ignoring the electrical shocks that burned through his leg. The generator sparked once, twice, then died. The sudden silence was deafening. The dragons collapsed, exhausted and traumatized. Danny collapsed too, his leg badly burned, his lungs full of smoke. Wells pulled a gun. The Obsidian Circle does not tolerate interference. He never got the shot off. The dragons recovered faster than anyone expected. Blaze rose first, his white-hot flames burning brighter than ever before. Every instinct in his young body screamed for revenge against the ones who hurt him. But he looked at Danny first, waiting. Storm and Cloud were next, moving to flank Wells and his team. They could kill these people easily. They wanted to. Danny could see it in their eyes. Crooked's jaws could crush Wells in one bite. Whisper could strike from camouflage before anyone saw her coming. Little Bit's empathic sense could guide them to every team member hiding in the compound. They could do it, should do it. These people had tortured them, tried to steal them, hurt their human. But they waited. Danny struggled to his feet, his burned leg barely supporting him. Blood ran down his arms from where he had torn himself free. Smoke made every breath painful. He looked at his dragons and saw them poised on the edge of violence. One word from him, and they would become the monsters everyone feared. No, Danny said. His voice was barely a whisper. Stand down. Blaze's flames flickered. Storm and Cloud stopped moving forward. Crooked opened his jaws, releasing wells from their threat. You are better than this, Danny told them. You are better than they are. The dragons obeyed. They surrounded Wells and his team, trapped them, held them in place. But they did not kill. Station security finally broke through the lockdown 17 minutes later. They found a scene that made no sense. 6 dragons, each capable of destroying armed soldiers, sitting calmly while holding criminals at bay. And 1 injured human who refused medical treatment until the dragons were checked first. The entire attack had been recorded by the facility's cameras. The footage showed everything: the neural torture, the dragon's restraint, Danny's choice. Counselor Reth called an emergency session before the day ended. Anti-dragon groups cited the footage as proof of danger. The dragons had gone berserk, destroyed property, nearly killed people. But other people saw something different. They saw creatures who chose mercy when they had every right to choose violence. They saw beings who could have become monsters but refused. The probationary period was not over. Reth pushed for immediate termination based on the attack footage. Then Little Bit did something that changed everything. The emergency council session felt different from the first hearing, heavier, more final. Danny sat in the same chair he had occupied months ago, but now his leg was bandaged and his arms were wrapped in burned dressings. Dr. Tanaka sat beside him, her own injuries hidden under her coat. The dragons were transported in a specialized containment vessel this time. Triple reinforced walls, armed guards at every corner, weapons tracking systems locked on target. The entire station was on high alert. Counselor Reth looked older than Danny remembered. The attack footage had been played dozens of times over the past week, analyzed by experts across the galaxy. Now Reth prepared to present his final judgment. The evidence is clear, Reth began, his voice carrying through the chamber. When subjected to the neural disruption field, the dragons became violent and destructive. They caused significant property damage. They endangered lives. This proves they are too dangerous to exist in civilized space, regardless of training or good intentions. He pulled up the footage, showing Blaze's wild flames, Storm crashing into walls, the chaos and destruction. The watching crowd murmured. I move for immediate termination and complete ban on dragon contact programs. Counselor Hayes leaned forward. The footage also shows the dragons were being tortured. They were in agony, yet even in that state they did not attack Mr. Ross. Reth waved dismissively. Coincidence, random chance in their berserk state. Dr. Tanaka stood, her voice sharp. I have analyzed their movements frame by frame. Blaze's flames came within 3 inches of Mr. Ross 17 times. Each time the dragon altered the direction at the last possible moment. That is not coincidence, that is control. The chamber erupted in arguments, pro-dragon. Supporters shouting about cruelty and second chances. Anti-dragon activists demanding safety and termination. Security moved to restore order. In the containment vessel, the dragons huddled together. They could sense the anger in the room, the fear, the hatred. Little Bit pressed against the transparent wall, trying to reach Danny. Then she began to broadcast. It started as a pulse of emotion that washed over everyone in the chamber. Counselors, lawyers, security, observers. Thousands of people all connected to Little Bit's empathic sense at once. And she showed them everything. The breeding facility from the dragon's perspective. Tiny hatchlings too young to understand why everything hurt. The confusion of being shocked every time they moved, every time they ate, every time they tried to sleep. The desperate hope that maybe the pain would stop if they were good enough, quiet enough, small enough. It never stopped. The broadcast shifted to the moment Danny found them, the terror of seeing another being approach, expecting more pain. Then the alien sensation of gentleness, the warmth of his hand, the safety of his voice. Little Bit showed them what it felt like to trust for the first time. Then came the attack at Halcyon. the neural field reactivating every nightmare, every trauma, every moment of torture. The agony that demanded violence, that screamed for them to destroy everything. And through it all, one constant thought: do not hurt Danny, do not hurt him, no matter what, protect Danny. The broadcast showed Storm changing direction mid-charge to avoid crushing the human he loved. Blaze redirecting flames again and again, fighting through pain that would drive any creature mad. Crooked's jaws closing on empty air instead of Wells' throat because Danny had said no. Little Bit showed them the choice: kill or show mercy, become monsters or remain themselves. The dragons had chosen. The broadcast ended and the chamber sat in absolute silence. Counselor Reth had both hands pressed against his face. His shoulders shook. Other council members were openly crying. Hayes spoke first, her voice thick with emotion. They made a moral choice. While being tortured, driven to madness, they chose compassion over revenge. They chose to be better than their pain. She stood and faced the crowd. These dragons have shown more humanity than most beings I have encountered. They deserve the same rights we grant to any sentient species capable of moral reasoning. Reth lowered his hands. His face was wet with tears. I have been wrong. He looked at the dragons, meeting Little Bit's eyes through the containment wall. I have judged them based on fear instead of evidence. I have let prejudice override justice. He stood beside Hayes. I move for immediate grant of provisional citizenship status for all 6 dragons. They have proven sentience, moral capacity, and the ability to form cross-species bonds. They deserve protection under council law, not execution. The vote was called. It was not close. 47 in favor, 3 against, 2 abstentions. The dragons were granted legal personhood. The implications spread across the galaxy within hours. If dragons could be citizens, what about other species labeled as threats? The ruling opened doors that had been closed for centuries. The Obsidian Circle was dismantled over the following months. Wells and his team faced charges of crimes against sentient beings. The breeding facility data led to dozens more arrests. The galactic black market for exotic creatures collapsed. Research Station Halcyon became the Halcyon Dragon Sanctuary, properly funded and recognized. Other rescued dragons were brought there, survivors of poaching and illegal trade. Danny discovered he was not the only human who could bond with dragons, just the first willing to try. Dr. Tanaka's research revolutionized xenobiology. Her papers on cross-species empathy became required reading in universities across known space. 6 months after the hearing, Danny stood in the meadow watching his dragons fly. They were fully grown now, each the size of a small spacecraft. Blaze's white scales gleamed like stars. Storm and Cloud moved through the air in perfect synchronization. Crooked's strength had made him the protector of the younger dragons brought to the sanctuary. Whisper could disappear completely when she wanted privacy. And Little Bit, still the smallest, still the one who felt everything, landed beside Danny and lowered her head. He placed his hand on her snout like he had that first day in the lab. He felt warmth, connection, trust. The galaxy had believed dragons could only bring death. They had built laws and weapons and fear around that belief. They had hunted dragons nearly to extinction. But they had forgotten something important. Fear makes monsters of everyone. It turns victims into threats, children into weapons, desperate cries for help into declarations of war. Danny had heard the distress call and answered with compassion instead of fear. He had seen scared babies instead of deadly predators. He had chosen to trust when the entire galaxy chose to destroy. And 6 dragons had chosen to be better than their pain. The sanctuary grew, more dragons arrived, more humans learned to bond with them. Walls between species began to fall. New friendships formed across the galaxy. Little Bit purred under Danny's hand, a sound of perfect contentment. The chains were broken. Not just the metal collars that had caused so much pain, but the chains of fear and hatred that had bound entire civilizations. The dragons were free, and they had chosen to stay.